Welcome everyone to This Week in Tyranny. It's a show where we talk about all kinds of gang shit going on all over the world, talking about the occurrences of everyday life in this tyranny that we see on a daily basis, not complaining about it, just talking about the objective reality of what's going on. So we're gonna shoot from the hip, let you know how it's really going down. This is June 8th, Sunday, episode 131. I'm going to talk about a few things. The climax of this is going to be artificial intelligence is the topic of the video. But before we get into AI, I'm going to talk about a lot, numerous other things that happened that really just made the show like today. This was going to be just a show about AI, and then too many things going on that I just have to mention. One thing I won't mention and I'm not going to talk about is Elon and Trump. The Elon Trump thing, I'm not talking about it because it's one big bullshit to me. How two men feel about each other is not news. That's nothing for me to talk about. I'm making the point by not talking about it. I want to talk about things that are objectively happening, things that are real, things that we can point to and they'll be there tomorrow. One of those things is the unrest in Los Angeles, the protest, the Los Angeles immigration protests or riots, depending on which side you're on, right? You can call something a protest or a riot depending on how you feel about the people engaged in those behaviors. What you call it, if you call it a protest or a riot, I really don't care because, in my opinion, when it comes to the actions that need to be taken against government in the 21st century, it should be a lot more than protest or riots. It's really not enough. I've said it before that I think protests are half measures. It's You could say it's better than nothing, and in certain circumstances, I might be in a protest. I might join the protest. I might join a riot. I'm not ruling it out. I haven't been parts of any of those things, but I'm not ruling it out either. It depends. So I'm not here sitting on my ivory tower telling people what they should or shouldn't be doing. What people are doing though in Los Angeles is they're giving some pushback. There's pushback in Los Angeles as a result of the raids, the arrests, the deportations, okay? Having to do with Donald Trump's domestic policy concerning immigration. And as a result of that pushback now, the White House has sent in the military to Los Angeles, 2,000 National Guard troops. You could call it sending in the National Guard, but really, without euphemisms, they're sending in the military. Okay, they're just sending in the softest branch of the military. Now, I know the YouTubers and the podcasters are ecstatic about this. Okay, they're overjoyed, and everybody can't wait to hit live and flip through all of the live cams, talk about what's going on in Los Angeles, talk about who threw which bottle, and what kind of tanks the National Guard are gonna roll in. The news are just the same, right? I'm not really going to talk about all those details, as you already know. I'm not going to claim to know what's going on every street either, So I'm not claiming insider knowledge, and I don't think we need to know. I don't think we need to know what's going on specifically there on the ground because we basically can tell what's going on. It's very predictable what people are going to do when it comes to mass movements, mass protests. When you get enough people out on the street, it's pretty obvious what they're going to do. They're going to do the simple, like during any sports event or any hockey game. It's not a surprise what people are going to chant. They're not going to come up with some new Tchaikovsky number, so some classical music. They're not going to come up with something poetic. They're going to chant "Ref, you suck." "Ref, you suck" is all we have to chant, or chant the goalie's name. If it gets bad enough, what can you do? You're going to throw a beer on the ice, or you're going to throw a jersey out onto the ice. It's going to be generally the same lowest common denominator mass movements. And that's how it goes when you get people who are just fed up with the injustices and they go out onto the street. The things they do is they're not going to be like the Tibetan monks setting themselves on fire and it turns into a big thing. You may get the Chinese man who got in front of the tank and got run over, and there's of course the photo of him in front of that tank, right? Not to say something profound can come of that, but I'm just talking about it's usually always the same. I've seen enough history to know it's the same. When the arrests, the raids, whatever they are, they get numerous enough, or when a single injustice is hideous enough, like with the Rodney King situation in 1992, Rodney King being beaten by 4 cops, and then the cops got acquitted. And of course, what came as a result of that was the infamous Los Angeles riots of 1992. That's 33 years ago. And the same kind of things people did then, people will do again. People will start throwing things at cars. They're going to set fires. What they won't do is shoot at government agents. No, but they will be killed by government, and they will kill each other, which is what happened during the 1992 riots. They beat up and killed innocent people on the street, shop owners, truck drivers, those kinds of attacks. Over 60 people died in the LA riots. No police or military were killed during the LA riots. And I mention it because with all of the lore and mystique of West Coast gangster culture, all of the big bad West Side, West Coast gangsters, right? That pedigree there. When the action broke out in Los Angeles in the 90s, which was, which was the deadliest time for gang warfare, and it was just, it was a war in the streets in the 90s. But when the action broke out for real, there was no gangster at all from any of those people. Thousands of guns were stolen as well. You can't say they didn't have the guns, because they had the guns. Thousands of guns were stolen, looted, and none were used on police or military. At a time where the police actions were supposed to be the thing that people are protesting against. Now, before you accuse me of a whole bunch of inciting violence and things that I don't do, I'm not saying that would be justice either. But at that point, what's going on is the police and the armed forces, they're at least representing and defending the same government agencies that committed the injustice. That the people who committed the injustice were working for that agency. And now these people are working for the same agency. So if you're going to be mad at anybody, be mad at them. Now, even if you go and kill some cops, I'm not saying it's justice. It's not justice. It's still tragedy. But sometimes tragedy necessitates a tragedy in return, especially when it happens systematically over and over and over again. So when these agents are showing up, and I'm seeing the videos, I'm not going to play all of them. I'm not going to play any videos, actually, because people need to find them. People need to research them. I'm not going to spend the time to do the editing and be like all the other news shows and podcasts, We should all be self-sufficient researchers. I link the things that are important to link, and other than that, I'm just talking about things that everybody else can find, So when these agents are showing up, 5 or 10 of them, and they got their faces covered like with a bandana, it's not very professional. They look like they might as well be in a cartel somewhere over in Colombia, right? So they got their face covered in a bulletproof vest, and other than that, it's street clothes, and they're acting like that they're on the streets. They're walking like gang members. They don't look very professional, and then they take a man out from his house, and they're taking him in a car, and they're gonna go take him away, and he's gonna get locked up. He's gonna get deported. As that's happening, you see it's clearly no violence is going on. Normal, peaceful neighborhood with women and children crying as this man is being taken away from his family. I've seen several videos like this, and this is what's going on. When that happens, I don't know that guy's criminal history. I don't know what he's done. I don't know anything. But that right there is a tragedy and always will be. When you got a person like that who wasn't hurting anybody ripped from their family, and everybody knows what's going to happen, it's very likely they don't see each other again because of all sorts of different circumstances. At that point, when that happens, it's not about who they are or how they cross the border. Whenever you tear a family apart like that, you better be sure of what you're doing. You better be sure. And you're going to take 100% responsibility for that action. If you take it that far and you're trying to hurt somebody in front of their kids or take them away from their kids, you are judge, jury, and executioner. Like, that's the real world. There is no due process there. There's no organization or flag or policy that you can hide behind. There's no way to whitewash what is actually happening. Because what's actually happening is exactly that. It's a tragedy. You're tearing them apart. That's the world I live in. I live in the actual world, the objective world, and I'm calling these things as they are. So it's not to get into immigration policy. Objectively, that's as bad as it gets, right? right there. But also in the objective world, there are plenty of abusers, kidnappers, and killers out there. There are bad people out there. But there's only one kind of an abuser that claims moral right. You've heard this before. I'm talking about government. Because the street gangster is the judge, jury, and executioner in his life. He knows the life, he knows what he's getting into, and then when he loses, inevitably when he gets shot, when he gets killed, when he gets arrested, he accepts the life, okay? The serial killer is the same. He's his own. He's the judge, jury, and executioner. He's choosing that path. He knows he's playing God. He knows he's carrying out his fantasies, and when they inevitably are brought to justice, he accepts it. He had his run, and that's it. That's the life he chose. But criminals in government, they hide behind the process, and they claim they're doing it for us. They claim they're fighting for you, fighting for us. It's like they didn't split the family up and put the man in El Salvador. The justice system did, right? We did it. We're a nation of laws. We did that, right? Which means you did it. We did it together. And that's what it means to vote, by the way. That's why I don't vote. I never vote. It's a submission ritual. It's like communion or the transfiguration of Christ. So when you vote, you go from living in the objective world, you go through a mystical process of giving up your responsibility. You give up the objective world where every individual is responsible for his actions and his actions only. You give that up. Now with this, how unfortunate the swindle is with the protests and the riots. So people have accepted that roundups and deportations are right. And the same government that let people in large numbers, they let these people in from Venezuela and Colombia and Mexico with no chance to make a life other than by living off the system. That's the problem. Because I also am an immigrant, but I don't live off the system. I like the system lives off of me. I produce. I'm a producer. I do a lot of things. I don't need anybody to take care of me at all. There are plenty of people like that, but a lot of this mass immigration has been just people that have to live off the system because they have no other way. They have no language. They have no community here to kind of pick them up. They have no family here. They have no right to work, right? So they live off the system, your system, the one you pay for, with the money that the government gangsters take from us all. So that same government that brought them all in, and it's the same government. Don't buy it that just because it's a different administration that it's a different government. It's not a different government, right? It's a different mask. It's a different face, but it's the same government. And now it's going to normalize midnight raids, paramilitary law enforcement, detainment without due process, search without cause or warrant, and then people celebrate it. People think that they're cleaning things up out there. As if people from Mexico and Venezuela are anything close to the real problem. They're not anything close to the problem. United Nations enforced mass migration is a problem. Anti-whiteness is a problem. Cultural warfare is a problem. Those things are all happening, but that is not the problem being addressed by the current Trump administration, nor any administration in any country in the world. You name them, Orban, Bolsonaro, Milei, they're not doing any real strong, pro-nation action. And when Trump and Putin and Xi Jinping and Milei meet at the G20 summit in November in Johannesburg, what do you think they're going to talk about? You think they're all going there to make their own countries great? They're going to talk about making their own countries great at a meeting organized by the United Nations and the IMF and the World Bank and all these intergovernmental organizations? You think they're there for the interests of their nation? They're in the interest of the international governing body. Can people still not see that immigrants are used by government to scare citizens into supporting more government power? So someone gets treated a little better than you, and you're supposed to want them out, right? Because that's the big issue, right? That the citizens have to pay taxes. These people don't, but they can get health insurance, so then it's like their lives are a little bit easier because they don't get robbed as much as you, and they can commit a crime and they get let out, or whatever. Like that's as far as the narrative goes, right? That they're not held to the same standard. So they get abused a little bit less than you, and because of that, they're supposed to be your enemy. When, once again, the reality of it stares us in the face, and it's the same lesson that we never seem to learn. That the enemy is not out there, the enemy is within. The enemy is flying our own flag, telling you that they're the ones keeping the real bad guys away. That's an old story. That's a repetitive ass story. That's story number one. And we're going to get into, it might as well be 1A, because the travel ban. There's U.S. President Donald Trump, he signed an order banning citizens of 12 countries from entering the United States. That order goes into effect on Monday, so tomorrow. A move that the president promulgated to protect the country from foreign terrorists. The countries affected by the latest travel ban are Afghanistan, Myanmar, Chad, Republic of the Congo, Equatorial Guinea, Eritrea, Haiti, Iran, Libya, Somalia, Sudan, and Yemen. Also, these other 7 countries will be partially restricted, so Burundi, Cuba, Laos, Sierra Leone, Togo, Turkmenistan, and Venezuela. 12 and 7, right? Very biblical numbers. Very biblical numbers fitting for a country whose people time and time again ask for a savior. They praise Jesus and they worship Judas. So there's your 12 and 7 for you. But I live in the actual world. So on the other hand, I'm going to tell you that I wouldn't want to live in any of those other 19 countries. So I'm not here trashing America. Because when it comes to freedom of living, I love America. I don't want Afghanistan's religious culture. I don't want Venezuela's economic crisis here. I don't. I wouldn't mind some other Venezuelan things here, but that's beside the point, right? Now, the issue is banning movement in and out of the country of the world, in and out of the country from other places of the world. That's exactly the type of thing that turns your country into a third world nation. So this is the ironic thing, right? The implied statement is, we don't want our country to be like that. But by closing your borders off, you're doing the same kind of things that made that country like that. Isolation, holding on to the old, the stale, right? As opposed to real innovation, which is letting people go in and out and saying, "Hey, you're free to try your luck here, and if you can handle it, then you have a place for you here. You always have a place here in America." And that's what draws the producers, the most capable, and it gives people a chance, and then creates so much wealth that there's room for people who aren't producers. There's room for the artists. Ironically, the artist. America should be a heart of art and creativity, but it isn't. Like, it's ridiculous that we could have these art movements flourishing under communist regimes and the romanticism in Russia with the whole Russian Empire, and then when it comes to having an actual free land, a land where you can really make a living off of things, it's like the real profound artist in America never got started. It's over before it started. But that's another issue. That's another topic. The health of any system is determined by the freedom of movement in and out. Like, your body needs to have inhalation, exhalation, and then all the old cells have to move out, and then the new cells have to have the ability to take their place. If you have water standing there, standing water gets stale, it's not clean water. Meanwhile, you could have the same water, as long as it's flowing, part of the water cycle, it's going to be clean and drinkable to you. Bottom line is, when we're talking about terrorists are produced by organized killing. They're not produced by Haiti or Somalia or Iran. Terrorists are produced by organized killing, no matter where it is in the world. Organized killing like the armed forces or gangs or other gangs. What a joke it is to worry about someone getting on a plane in Africa or Asia, right? That's what we're worried about. They fly all the way to the United States, and then after that whole flight, setting up here, creating a terrorist cell, and organizing attacks there. That's what we're told happens, right? Uh, when there are all these attacks happening by people who live here in the United States, and so many of those are former military, like trained killers. We're talking about trained killers. Uh, People who were before sent to other places in the world, sent to foreign lands by the government to do who knows what, for who knows what reason. That's what the military vets have been put through. That they were somewhere for no sense. There was no sense to it, no reason, no principle they were fighting for, just misery and mutual destruction. There are plenty of people like this, and then they end up carrying out the mass shootings, the attacks. That's not just in this country, that's all over the world. And if they weren't part of the military per se, it was other organizations, other gangs. The point is, the armed forces themselves are a terrorist factory. They produce terrorists. Not just people who are in the military, but the military trains people who end up being paramilitary or otherwise terrorists, like Hamas that was trained by Israel, like Al Qaeda that was trained by the United States, and so on and so forth. Oh, there's the whole series by David McGowan. Programmed to Kill is the book. Like all of these serial killers who had military training at some point, who are cops, you know. It's over and over again. And over again, here's another story that just happened, but you've heard it before. Dozens of additional law enforcement officers from an array of agencies joined the investigation and search Friday for Travis Caleb Decker. 4 days after the girls, his three daughters, they have their names listed: 9-year-old Peyton, 8-year-old Evelyn, and 5-year-old Olivia, after the three of them were found dead at a remote campsite outside Leavenworth. This is in Washington State. So, uh, basically, so this is alleged now because it hasn't been proven in court. But the dad, he killed his three daughters. The girl's mother reported them missing the night of May 30th when Decker failed to return them to their home. This guy, Travis Decker, he was an infantryman in the army from March 2013 to July 2021. He was deployed to Afghanistan for 4 months in 2014, where he was an automatic rifleman there. That information came out. This is the first of many. Not the first of many. This is the latest of many. My point is, this occurs again and again, and so 3 children killed. Last September, his ex-wife Whitney Decker wrote in a petition to modify their parenting plan that his mental health issues had worsened and that he had become increasingly unstable, often living out of his truck. She sought to restrict him from having overnight visits with the girls until he found housing. And this is what she wrote. Okay, I'm going to read it to you, because this makes the point for me. He has made huge sacrifices to serve our country and loves his girls very much. But he has got to get better, she wrote. I do not want to keep Travis from the girls at all, but I cannot have our girls staying in what is essentially a homeless shelter, at times unsupervised with dozens of strange men, or staying in a tent or living in his truck with him, both in extreme temperatures and unknown areas for their safety. Perfectly understandable concerns, right? But it started with, he made huge sacrifices to serve our country. And I ask, sacrifices to who? He didn't make any sacrifices to me. I never needed any of these soldiers. Right? So he made these sacrifices to his country, and then he loves his girls very much. And I ask, does he? Did he? Did he love them enough not to kill strangers in a foreign country when he went to Afghanistan? And look, and I know people that went to Afghanistan, or they went over to the Middle East. But I'm being objective here, right? So I don't care if I like you. I don't care if you're my family member. I don't care if you know somebody. Um, it's just like the results of our actions. I think we can look at this now and say, we were tricked. You guys were tricked. We were all tricked into thinking that this is the right thing to do. There are times at which it is the right thing to pick up a rifle and throw on a flag and a uniform and participate in a war. I'm not saying there isn't. I'm not saying I wouldn't do it. But Afghanistan for sure wasn't one of those times. Iraq wasn't one of those times. It just wasn't. Because the people that killed those thousands of people in the attacks on the World Trade Center and others, they were in our own government. They were the same people. You sacrificed for them. So he didn't love them enough to be there for them, to not miss their childhood. He didn't love them enough not to destroy his own mind and spirit. He didn't love them enough not to endanger them. That's it. He sacrificed his humanity to a system, not to his family. His family was destroyed. And 3 dead children. 3 dead children. Is that not terrorism? So how is that not a terrorist attack? Like, I don't know if they were killed by, I'm assuming they were killed by gunfire. Maybe they weren't. It doesn't matter. But what if it was an explosion somewhere? Then it would be more like a terrorist attack. It's the same result. I say, name the last foreign terrorist who killed 3 American children. You won't find it. So this is a story that barely makes the news. And this is terrorism by a member of the U.S. military. Now, just because some definitions of terrorism include that it is for a political goal. Well, okay, it's not for a political goal, but we're talking about the same outcome, the same actual result. Tragic, senseless loss of life. There are these billboards around Chicago that I've seen that say gun violence is now the #1 killer of children. And I was talking with someone about this yesterday. Now today, a few hours ago, I saw an article from Stanford Medicine. And here it is. Study shows that majority of kids who die in mass shootings are killed by family members. By Erin Digitale. I'm going to link this one. Domestic violence underlies the majority of children and teens' deaths in U.S. mass shooting, a new Stanford Medicine-led analysis has found. So, just to be clear, define our terms, mass shootings is defined as 4 deaths or more, right? It doesn't matter if it happens in a school, a casino, a store, okay? Now, this is what they said in the article. It was surprising that domestic violence was so pervasive, that 59% of kids who died in mass shootings were at the hands of a family member, said the study's senior author Stephanie Chow, associate professor of surgery. So, I've said this many times before, but the surprising thing is these are mass shootings. So this is 4 people or more, and still you get 60% being relatives. And that includes the mass shooters that are strangers and who, like Sandy Hook and all of those, where it wasn't a family member. And just with all that included, you're still getting more than half, 40% by their parents exclusively. What else Stephanie Chow said? She said, when American parents are surveyed about their concerns, everyone is worried about school shootings, she said. The message from our data is really simple. Our fears are incorrectly placed. Our homes may, in fact, be more dangerous than schools. And at the same time, as I read it now, this can, of course, be taken to really do another tragic thing, to say that, hey, parents can't be trusted with their kids and they should spend more time in school, because isn't that not going on? All of these people that end up going to the armed forces and being traumatized and then doing violence back at home, they were all put through the public school system where they were told that these soldiers were heroes, right? So there's another whole aspect to this. So I'm not endorsing anybody. I'm not saying what Stanford is going to say is going to be right, but it's just to drive home the point now. We've gone from immigrants and terrorists to the violence going on here at home that we're doing to us, that people like us are doing to people like us. And this is the transition here. We have a common thread in this episode. It's not the immigrants that are a threat, it's our own government that's a threat to us. It's not the foreign invaders that commit terrorism, it's our own armed forces that commit the terrorism. And then when it comes to threat to children, it's not the strange that is the greatest danger. It's not the stranger danger. Turns out the greatest danger is the familiar within the family. And that theme is going to hold strong going into our final topic. Finally, here it is, artificial intelligence, which I've been thinking about talking about for 2 weeks. And it's I'm not really all that satisfied with what I'm going to put forth about artificial intelligence because there's more to talk about. But yeah, so it's not so much of a central point or conclusion that I have to convey. I'm not going to pretend to give you some profound thing about artificial intelligence, but I am going to give you a number of my thoughts and observations that I just don't think are represented in the conversation and the debates. So I'm just going to give you what's in my head and you guys come to your own conclusions because that's what we need to do. Number one point is, with or without AI technology, the threat is the same. It's always been the same. It's the same threat that's been there. It's the people who stand behind military power. Right? Remember, the threat is being killed, being arrested by the police and armed forces. That's always been the threat. Unless it's some foreign army. But no foreign army has ever invaded the United States. So why do we assume that to be the threat when there's all this violence happening within our own borders, right? So that's the danger there. Point number one is just really the proper context that AI is the weapon, not the weapon user. AI is like the gun, but it's the person behind the gun, right? That's what we say. Well, it's true. But instead, people are concerned about the technology itself, the machines themselves. Machines taking over the world and ruling the world is a possibility. It's an unprecedented possibility. Now, a small number of people taking over the world, that's not just a possibility, that's repeatable, objective history. And not just a few times, literally every day, for all the days that we have in recorded history. Every day you are alive, you wake up into a world where a small number of people are ruling the world. They're dominating you, they're in control of a whole lot of violence and abuse every day. So that is the real big problem to be dealt with. It's the same problem each day. And then we have this hypothetical problem, a potential problem of machine dominance. That the dominance by a small group of humans will cease and a dominance by machines will take their place. And I see this just like procrastination. Like, you got a big issue to deal with. You know that's the thing you have to deal with. And because it's such a big issue to deal with, you're going to do a million other things before you get to the big issue. And I see the main issue being put off for other side issues, like artificial intelligence, in the way that people address it. And I think people are worldview procrastinators. So they concern themselves with a whole lot of things that aren't the real issue. And I'm frustrated talking with them. I don't want to talk to them. So that's it. Point number two, that being said, AI does represent a huge threat because it allows for the removal of human responsibility. That's the threat for me. Again, this is before we even get into the actual capabilities of the technology. What AI is going to allow is that no more human beings being the judge, jury, and executioner. But potentially, decisions made by a computer, and then the justification for that decision is not a human being having to justify themselves. It could just be the deference. They're going to defer to the authority of the computer. That's the threat. The decision-making process going to the machines, and then humans being the enforcers of those decisions, who are going to put their arms up and say, hey, you've heard this before. Hey, I don't make the rules. I just enforce them. right? Just like the cops, just like the immigration agents taking those people away. It's the same system. So this is not a new system, it's the same system, just with an added layer of separation. It is like somebody controlling a drone that is bombing a village. It's still a human being that took that action, the one controlling the drone, but with a layer of separation. What AI is just another layer of separation. It's a buffer layer between actions taken and guilt accrued. That's point number 2. Point number 3 is AI is not so much even a new thing. It's not a new invention or a paradigm shift, but a new gimmick. On our end, it's a gimmick. On our end, what we see is a gimmick. At the end that we're concerned about. Well, technology and surveillance and data gathering is really nothing new. So, the technological capabilities, the technological threat is small for me, but the human threat is large. The threat is always human beings. Like, even if you get lost in the forest or something, you're the biggest threat is still going to be other humans, right? And there are other threats, but we have to go by what happens repeatedly over and over again. So I've seen it claimed already. AI is out of control. We cannot control where these answers are coming from. We don't know what they're thinking. AI is out of our control. We've heard that from like serious representatives of companies and governments. And I think it's bullshit. I think AI is still firmly under the control of those who programmed it and the people who are involved in and stand behind and above military technology. Those are the people I'm talking about. That's the they. Whoever is is the one giving the orders to the military. I understand machine learning as a concept, right? So I understand like some of the specifics of AI and so on and so forth. Okay, I realize that I'm not an expert in everything, but there's just no new technology with AI. It's not a new technology, but a new procedure. It's the new procedure that people are now going to be conditioned to accept whatever answers spit out to them, because they're going to think that the answer comes from a highly intelligent, highly informed, infallible computer, when it could just be a lie. It's just like somebody claiming that they're a representative of God, that the answer came from God. Well, this is all it is. It's just a new version of that. Because people don't believe in God anymore, but they believe in computer intelligence. That whole idea of an unknowable God that is controlling everything and you'll never understand their decisions, isn't that artificial intelligence? Like, it's the same idea over and over again. But as far as how would we even know? So I'm much less concerned about the possibility of machines controlling the power grid and controlling who gets the food and what chemicals are sprayed. I'm much more concerned at this point about the availability of information, because I've actually seen that. I've seen information being cut off. I've seen wrong answers being given by these algorithms, these Groks and Chat GPTs. So I'm much more concerned about censorship in real time, false information being put out there, and alteration of historical record. Really, most of all, I'm concerned about them changing history. See, if you got the physical proof of something, you'll always have it. That's like your safeguard against someone altering reality, right? Because if somebody can control your entire environment, then they control reality. You have to have your foothold in reality. You have to have like your own evidence to yourself that backs up your worldview, your individual rights, even. But if you just believe the screen, then you don't get that. There's no checks and balances on narratives. Right? The web page that was published 20 years ago, you go to the same URL, but it could be a different web page because, of course, you could change the things that are on the website. So if you have a system where they're controlling that database, and say even when it comes to like what records of the weather, Like what is the average temperature in June? So say 20 years from now, it's 30 degrees in June, right? This is a little bit of an extreme example, but if nobody has the actual record of those real temperatures that it's supposed to be warm, and you can change history to say this was always the temperature. This is very George Orwell 1984, right? But to me, that's like a real threat. I'm not going to say that World War III or control of food, all these resources is a real threat, because as of now, I don't see people accepting it that easily. But people do accept reading completely false things easily. So I'm going to be concerned about that, because I don't think that the ruling classes, the malicious ruling classes, the criminals in power, I don't think they need a war to get done what they want to get done. They're already getting done what they get done. If you're intelligent and you don't have children, and you don't have an easy life, they can wait 2 generations. This is easy. They don't need to control the guns. They already, look at all the people who own guns. They all support the current president, most of them. So what do you need to take the guns away for? Me included, I think a lot of people feel really stupid about what they thought the concern is. The concern was always the stupidity of people and how easily led they are. Their support for evil, that's it. Their willingness to condone violence, that's always been the threat. And that's the concern for me. Now, the way to combat that is to adjust to that world by demanding and trusting information coming from individuals who vouch for it. By trusting people, verifying people. That is the answer. The answer to artificial intelligence is organic intelligence, natural intelligence. And sticking with those people that are dependable, they're trustworthy, and they don't freaking change. They don't blow with the wind. They're not going to change overnight. They don't change their narrative, and if they change their narrative, it's based on they have a record. You can trust what they're saying. So the people are the threat. It's people who are arming and programming these unmanned automated military drones. It's the people who implement the algorithms. It's the people who are going to take over the control of food, water, and energy. And those same people are going to tell you that they're not responsible for what they do because AI. Don't believe those people. They're responsible for what they do. And everyone is responsible for what they do individually. So, trust only people who have a record of behavior. Trust people who don't flip-flop, who don't shift and don't switch to blaming somebody else. That's the extent of it. That's what it's all about. The events of this past week actually affected me pretty hard. Yeah. Because people have just gone for it so easily, and like the same people, I mean, so many people voted for Trump, and now what? You see what's going on now? Who cares? You got tricked again. And if people are tricked so easily, and they're smart in other areas, but in this area they're like a lab rat, and you know what they're gonna do. It doesn't inspire me with a whole lot of confidence. So hopefully those people see that some people have a record of being right. They have a record with their history. Their philosophy is dependable. And I strive to be a person that is dependable. That is a quality I've learned to love. I haven't always been a dependable person. I've been very unpredictable and kind of a wild card. Learning to be dependable is a very nice thing. And that's who I strive to be. That's just me, okay? That's 2 minutes of subjectivity and 42 minutes of objectively breaking that world down. Because the world is crazy as hell. They're trying to give you one big bullshit on TV. I'm giving you one big serving of reality. I'm not the only one, but I can only be me. So thank you, and I'll see you next week.